So as airports and airlines navigate a rapidly changing and evolving landscape, the passenger experience is no longer just about getting from A to B. It is certainly about how the journey feels, how intuitive it is, and how well it adapts to individual needs. Today we're going to explore how technology, collaboration and new commercial models, and more broadly how human-centric design are helping to reshape the airport experience, both today and setting up for the future also. In a recent article that I wrote on LinkedIn called The Illusion of Progress, I explored how many of the so-called innovations in air travel, from kiosks to biometrics, etc., often feel surface level upgrades rather than sort of true transformation. And a real challenge I see is not just about adding technology, but really rethinking the journey from the passenger's point of view and integrating technology into that seamless and an inclusive and seamless way. So looking forward to the conversation here and exploring what it takes in order to truly transform airports, and looking forward to the discussion. So again, I'm not going to go through long bios from each of our panelists. You can see the names up on the screen, and I'll get them to introduce themselves as we sort of kick off this session. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. The first question we're going to be exploring is around, customer expectations have shifted, I think, from efficiency alone to much more about experiences that are intuitive, personalized, and even sort of emotionally resonate. But what does great look like in 2025, I think, is a good starting question. So, Gerri, from a Vancouver perspective, how is Vancouver redefining customer experience in light of changing passenger expectations?
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you very much. My role has just changed at Vancouver International Airport. My title used to be C3PO, and I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but it's now the VP of Commercial Data. And so what I'm looking at particularly is the data infrastructure that informs everything we do in terms of our operational resilience and our ability to move bags and passengers and vehicles, aircraft, most efficiently as possible, but also the passenger experience. And as everyone here knows, airports don't really have a personal connection with the passenger in the same way as airlines do, or perhaps other groups might do. So when a passenger arrives at our airport, we don't know who they are. We can find out a little bit through Wi-Fi, a little bit through the web, but it's difficult to get that one-on-one engagement. Vancouver Airport has won the Skytrax Award for the best airport in North America 14 times, so we must be doing something right. And what I think we're doing right is our emphasis on passenger experience or guest experience, which has always been a priority. And to give you an idea of how much we've invested in passenger experience, we have 165 blue coats. Those are the passenger experience people who work for us. They're our staff. And on top of that, we have 345 green coats. And those are the volunteers. They're very often retired people or people who love aviation. And their role is to make sure that our passengers never have any problems. And they speak multiple languages. They're highly trained. And so that's over 500 people at our terminal that are focused on that. So the actual human experience is really important. I'm a techie, and my whole life is all around technology. And so now we're moving on to how can we use data and other technology advances to carry over that profound sense of caring and generosity and personal experience into that world. And I've got a lot more to say, but I think the other panelists should weigh in here. Yeah.
Thanks, Gerri. And Harry, from a Palm Springs perspective, a fairly sort of unique airport, and many might say a unique passenger demographic, how do you tailor the experience to meet the needs at Palm Springs?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the Palm Springs community in general, we're a small airport, but we punch above our weight, right? So we're strategically and regionally adjacent to LAX. and have a lot of passengers from the Coachella Valley as well as from the Riverside County. All that to say, locally, a lot of our population is elderly, retired, high wealth individuals. We have a lot of non-English speaking folks that come through our facility, and it's highly LGBTQ in the Palm Springs area. And so we really have to look at those elements of our population as we're planning and developing our airport. We recently adopted a strategic plan for the airport, and our mission is moving you with unforgettable hospitality. And so to that end, we're moving from a provincial airport, which is really focused on that white glove service, to now providing people with choices. And those choices are digital. Those choices are the ownership over the experience.
And I mean, from a Delta perspective, how do digital touch points maybe influence the overall perception of the airport journey?
Yeah, I think overall, as we think about the touch point, I think that, everybody here, including us, have some level of anxiety coming to the airport, because ultimately it's about uncertainty. And so what we want to do is make sure that as we de-layer the set of uncertainties, we want to be able to remove that friction on that airport journey. And so we're looking at technology from the lens of how can you, enable individuals to walk through a baggage experience or go through security with collaboration and partnerships is super important. The other part of that is our front line. So a lot of my focus as well is really around enabling products, experiences for our front line at the airport, which includes our boarding, check-in, all of our Sky Clubs lounges, as well as our boarding applications. And so what we try to do is look at opportunities to see how do we make sure that our front line is adopting to that change, right? There's one thing of deploying technology for the customers, but it's really our people that drive the passion and the empathy for the day of travel. And so looking at the touch points around the journey of the check-in, bags, security, and boarding is our focus.
I mean, integrating the technology into that experience, and you can't remove the human touch point. It's such an important part of the experience overall. And certainly technology has promised a sort of frictionless travel experience for many years, but often, as we've just sort of been touching on, passengers still value that empathy, that reassurance that comes with that human connection. And in particular, when things go wrong, I think that's always a key requirement. The article that I mentioned earlier that I published recently, in that I argued we've seen a proliferation of sort of technology deployed that certainly has promised a seamless travel experience, but too often I've experienced that it's sort of bolted onto legacy systems or even potentially creates new sort of friction points in the journey. And I've always seen that need in order to be able to really challenge ourselves in order to say, how can we integrate technology? How can we do so and potentially even remove touch points? And Maurice, we touched on this a little bit in our conversation earlier. But what maybe, Maurice, some of the examples that you've seen where automation has improved the journey without compromising that human element?
Great question, and thank you, Simon. I wanted to touch on a couple of things and what Harry said and Amin said. A lot of the things that come back that we tie back into is tied into the data. You gave me 4 levels of your demographics of what you cater to. Without harnessing that data, you wouldn't know that. So now you get an opportunity to take the data, look at your footprint of your airport and says, okay, I have a fairly wealthy community. What is it that they want? Take that data. They need car parks or they need valet service curbside. Don't go to a valet drop-off. For your LGBTQ community made like, I don't know, whether it's vegan lifestyle in regards to type of foods, what the level of experience needs to be. So we take all of that and we look at the digital footprint, but now I get an opportunity to say, okay, I get to harness this data and I get to examine that, and now I can do some better data decision making around it. So I'll take that data, I'll get together with my federal regulatory bodies like TSA, because I've just subscribed to one of their programs. So now, when you go through security checkpoint, I get age, I get demographics, I get where you're going. So now I get to harness some more data, drop it into my tenant. Now I get a better footprint from a scalability perspective. This time of day, going these types of flights, these are the type of individuals moving through my airport. How do I need to ramp up and adjust the services and the service offerings that are available? Again, you also have an aging community. So like I said before, now you need more moving walkways. You need to ensure that you have working escalators. You need to ensure that you have more wheelchairs, right? Whether they're autonomous or not, because we're doing autonomous wheelchairs, we're examining more opportunities, because there's a level of expectation. It's almost like the traveling public expects for you to understand what their needs and wants are ahead of time. And the only way to do that without your traditional surveys is I'm taking this data, and this is what the data is telling me, and let the service just be there, which means they don't have to ask for it. Now they're like, wow, it's here. Could it be better? Now I'll take that level of sentiment and I can enhance it, but I've already started the process, right? So a lot of times we become more reactionary. And our goal and the intent is to be as reactive, or as proactive, or a more efficient planning as possible. Because if we get to that level, then I think we've already lost the customer, the level of expectation. And the reason being is you only get an opportunity to make a first impression one time. Right? So you need to exploit it as quickly as you possibly can and let them know this. Our goal is to do this. Now let's do the survey process. Are we doing it right? And how do we enhance the service and make it better for you? Which means now you're not expending resources unnecessarily. You're not expending resources on anything else, but you're making this value-added proposition. So for us, when you talked about the first part of your question, it's how do I leverage more technology? I want to sunset legacy apps. I don't want to put lipstick on the pig. And what basically is what you said.
It is
The
absolutely.
essence is what they said. You want to put lipstick on the pig. I'm not giving you an efficiency. I'm taking something, I'm color coding it, but we're not efficient. Because this is a great industry, but guess what? We are slow as heck to mature. All right? And I call a spade, or a clever, or a diamond. We are who we are. But we have to have the ability, if we can collaborate a little bit better, work with our airlines, the way our partners. There used to be the issue of who owned the passenger. Guys, guess what? We both
That's a
own
question coming up.
Okay, let me take that back. We don't own anything. But it's how do we provide these resources and give to that end-to-end journey? We want that seamless experience, right? And the challenges come into play. When you see one airport, you see one airport. There's 3 airports up here, and we operate differently. 2 of the airports you operate in, then guess what? We operate differently, right? Size of aircraft, your skill set, the customer demographics, all of that changes. So the goal and the intent is I should be able to give you my data on how things flow and expectations and vice versa. Because I did some additional stats the other day, and you asked it, we talked a couple of weeks ago, is I'm using some AI and some additional analytics at one of my coffee stations, right? And there were like 20 people in line. It was like 6:30 in the morning, and I go to the airport early just to walk. I'm like, I have to see what's going on. And I polled a couple of people in the back of the line. It's like, how long have you been in line? 5 minutes. What kind of coffee? Are you getting a macchiato, extra fat, no foam, double whip? No, I just want a regular coffee. And I'm like, wow. And if you walked away right now, you're going to go to the gate, and I just lost $5. What can we do? The data doesn't lie. You have to be able to take the data and get in front of it to be able to look at the expectations of your clientele. And I think that resonates well, and it's morphing more in industry.
I mean, there's a huge amount of data out there, and actually we've got to be able to access it and use it in order to be able to ensure that we're constantly meeting those needs. But getting it from the passenger, I think, is really important.
Exactly.
Gerri, from your perspective, and we've touched on this a little bit in terms of the needs to think about inclusivity and the different passengers that are traveling through our airports, etc. How do you ensure inclusivity in new technologies, especially for passengers who may require assistance or have an accessibility need?
So before I answer that question, I want to talk about touch points and data, if that's okay. Because right now what we're doing is we're mapping every single touch point that we have with our passengers. It's the passenger first viewpoint, and these are the physical touch points as well as the online touch points. So we look at, as Amin said, wherever the airport touches a passenger through the entire journey, but also the website, and we see that these touch points, including our partners' touch points, including social media, including advertising, all of those potential touch points allow for an exchange of data between us, our partners, and the passenger from the perspective of what do they need and what are they looking for. Not what we're trying to sell them, but what they need. So putting the passengers centrally in the operation and looking at the data exchange at each one of those touch points, and then creating an asset of a profile. Again, it's driven by the passenger need, not what we want to do. And sorry, these microphones slip down. Just tell me to put it up when it slips. Yeah, not from our perspective of we want to sell more, but we want the passenger to feel trust, secure, unstressed as they move through the airport. And this asset is a data asset. And from my perspective, airports have always been physical infrastructure businesses. They've been driven by engineering. Their prioritization has been to build out for capacity, new runways, new terminals. And we have not invested in our data infrastructure to the same extent that we have invested for obvious reasons. But right now, the data infrastructure is there to be built upon, and we need to invest as much now in the future of our data in terms of the infrastructure. So that's my.
It certainly feels that many airports have been late to the game of spending as much time and investment in that sort of data infrastructure, as you say, rather than the physical assets.
And I would then add to say that AI on top of a flimsy data infrastructure will give you flimsy insights. And the last thing you want is a flimsy insight if you're going to be managing your airport. Now I can talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so in Vancouver, we've piloted with Air Canada in a partnership the first biometric gates, e-gates, for security. And because we're very focused on diversity and equity and inclusion at the airport, we made sure we tested with our passengers. So our director of DEI is a person who has a condition where he's missing his forearms and his hands. So he can't press, right? He cannot press. So we made sure the cameras are perfectly aligned so that somebody in a wheelchair can go through. So, I mean, the short answer is that with AI and with new technologies, you always design with the margins, with trying to make sure that your use cases include accessibility and inclusion. It's much easier to do it with, and with AI in the same way. AI is biased, mostly because it's being trained by white guys, right? Sorry. But now that we know that it's biased, we can work and we can test and we can improve.
Certainly more work to do
Lots more
work to do.
Can I double click on what
Yeah,
Gerri was
please.
saying about accessibility, right? An example of a collaboration between exchange of data. I'm also a data person on nature. I guess we're all on panel with data backgrounds, but I think that, if you think about from an airline perspective, we know using what we call SSR, special service requests, how many wheelchair passengers are going to be on a certain flight. Imagine a world if I exchange that information with Gerri, and our ops team can then say, you know what, we have a lot of passengers with the wheelchair accessibility needs. Can we bring the plane to a closer gate? That's the power, right? And that orchestration only happens when you have the orchestration of the ops teams in conjunction with the airports, the operators, as well as an airline. And that's just one potential area of how you're bringing and removing that friction from those passengers who have accessibility needs. So I just wanted to kind of put that cherry on the top of that use case that you were talking about.
Amin and I connected beforehand, and we decided that we're going to collaborate because that's
Doing a great job.
exactly what we need to do, because we can bring operations to the airlines. Airlines can bring information about the passengers' needs to us. And can you imagine if we really collaborated with our data exchange, how powerful that would be?
And to add to that, realize that we're talking about the whole end-to-end journey experience. And in the U.S., it's called Title VI, right? You need to ensure that we deal with all the ADA-related issues. But if you took all of that data and you put that together and realize one thing, a lot of people don't realize, when let's say, we'll take wheelchair service, not even pet relief stations and everything for the visually disabled, et cetera, but Passengers with restricted mobility, and make a note, everyone in the audience, passengers with restricted mobility have the ability and normally spend more than passengers without a restricted mobility. You're just not giving them an opportunity to do so. You're not. So now the dynamic changes. Yes, I could work with gate assignment that reassign the gate from being at the end of the concourse to maybe to the beginning of the concourse. But when you're providing the service, do you need to shop? Do you need to do other things rather than let me get you through security checkpoint, get you to the gate, drop you off, and tell you to have a nice day, which is what happens today, pretty much, right? So the business dynamics need to change because the culture needs to change. The aging demographics need to, one of these days I am going to need wheelchair service. I do want to stop to the bar and I do want to, don't drop me to the, yes, take me through my journey, right? But how do you pivot and get me through that journey? So strategically, as your airport, and when you ask the question, my future of the airport gives you the ability to add to that level of self-sufficiency as best as you possibly can.
I mean, the data and sharing data, trusted data across airports, across airlines, across service providers is such a core foundation, and I'm sure it's been mentioned in many panel discussions over the last few days as well. And certainly, demand for travel is continuing to grow, and the pressure to scale operations whilst delivering that sort of tailored experience, an inclusive experience, as we're discussing, a resilient experience, I think, is also obviously critical to any airport, airline, and for the passenger. And it's a tough balancing act. And we've spoken about the need for systems, or the data exchange, and systems don't always talk. So maybe, Maurice, from your perspective, what do you see as that biggest sort of challenge or the biggest barrier to interoperability, and how are you tackling that?
Currently, right now, it's always been, well, I think COVID, well, I'll just put it this way. COVID was both good and bad. Bad because it basically shut down the industry. Good, it finally got a lot of individuals to sit at the table together and actually say we could truly collaborate. I think it was the first time we really had airlines, federal agencies, ground handlers. We all sat there and like, how can we get to a point of leveraging each other's resources to actually do something tangible and get some things done? And the goal and the intent is, we accomplished a lot of things. And as I've always said, before we get back into our comfort zones and back into our silos again, let's just find a way to blow them up. And this is not an airport, so I could say blow up and not go to jail. But we need to look at it from that concept of if we can collectively collaborate and look at what the experiences are supposed to look like, what the journey is supposed to look like, what does the data look like, with ensuring compliancy across the board, and actually put that together and say we can actually create a seamless experience. And if we can create that, and the data doesn't lie, we can actually harness and evaluate the data and make it applicable to your airport. And now it starts the process of the conversation. That little part about Title VI alone basically says, I get it, I understand it. Now, how do we ensure that we get to work and include that with the passengers, include that with the ground handlers? Now, there's also a lack of resources in human capital. Let's ensure that we're working on the human capital piece because we haven't touched that yet. And that's a key critical component, right? Because without the HR component, without the human capital component, you have nothing. I subscribe to a principle of 5 every day. If I don't have 5 people before I get to my office, I haven't done my job yet. Because if you're looking up or you're looking down, you're already lost, right? So I'm like, what am I missing? Right? Is there a technology? Is there someone that's not engaged? And then how well do we work towards making that happen? So it's tying in those little disparate pieces and putting that together and say, hey, we can achieve just one step at a time. Let's get over that hump and start injecting to create this new ecosystem for an airport.
And I think, Maurice, earlier you mentioned, owning the passenger journey. I think everyone here would probably agree no one party owns that passenger experience, and it requires everyone to sort of collaborate together, certainly to run the operation, but actually to deliver upon the transformation that I think everyone aspires to deliver. It certainly requires further collaboration. But Harry, how do you align incentives across stakeholders to achieve that level of transformation?
I think a number of things. So first, it comes down to the data and actually having information in hand that says, this is the change that we need, this is what needs to happen to make sure that we're running an efficient, safe operation. then once you have that data in hand, it's a matter of incentivizing the win-win between the parties. What works for the airport also can work for your organization and your organization and your organization. And I'll give you an example. Our U.S. Customs and Border Protection process right now and how we screen passengers hasn't really evolved much. We have pre-clearance, we have your traditional methods. If you were to ask Customs and Border Protection, they would say once someone arrives into a port, we would like them to get their bags, we would like to vet that person, and we would like to see their ID before they enter the port of entry. We would challenge Customs and Border Protection on that. We would say we can use technology better to do that and facilitate that arrivals process before the passenger even gets to the port of entry. And oh, by the way, by collecting this data that the airline has, we can then facilitate that process throughout the facility, throughout their journey once they've arrived. We can make sure that they have the necessary resources in place, whether it's ground transportation, whether it's hotel reservations, things like that. We have those things in place so that the passenger can complete their journey and enjoy their experience in Palm Springs. So I think that's one area of opportunity. But it's really about making that case with the data, and it's really about sitting down and talking about what the win-win is between those parties.
And I mean, from your perspective, have you got any recent examples of sort of successful partnerships that have improved passenger experience?
Yeah, so we've launched the concept of touchless ID. So we're looking at that in multiple areas. One is around our bag drop experience. So as I talked about earlier, of reducing friction as a theme, looking the ability to use your Flight Delta app, and then just being able to go to the agent. That has shaved off essentially a third, if not more, of time to actually check in a bag. The other area is with our partnership with TSA. So that touchless experience sort of propagates over into the TSA side around how do you go through the TSA pre-check lane. So even comparatively to the TSA pre-check, it's almost 75% improvements over the efficiency of that, right? And so those are some of the areas we're looking at partnership. And then the last one is when we think about our international travel, coming out of Incheon, if you're going from Atlanta, you now no longer need to recheck and reclaim your bag, right? Or reclaim and recheck your bag. It's now another 25 minutes through that experience. And so that's a government collaboration in conjunction with the Custom Border Patrol. So there's certainly a lot of goodness, but I think the biggest thing is how do you sort of sit down to the table, understand everybody's objectives, and then figure out what is that medium across everybody that can be beneficial for all of us.
I think, Amin and Harry, your examples there certainly resonate with me in the need to sort of think about how to remove duplicating processes, and actually when introducing new technology and the advancements of both AI and digitalization more broadly, the ability to share data with different stakeholders, which can ultimately potentially remove the need for additional processes, additional steps. That's an efficiency or potential efficiency in sort of cost of resourcing, but actually a better passenger experience. Just the ability to remove outdated steps. I mean, my personal view is that, if we set the aviation industry up today, we wouldn't set it up in the way that it's been set up. And it's worked really well, since the 1940s and 50s. But I think, Maurice, earlier you said, get rid of ticket desks. Why do we still have check-in as a process? Shouldn't it be I'm checking out if I'm not going to fly, rather than, hey, I'm going to fly? There's a huge opportunity just to rethink the way in which passengers travel today. That's certainly my view. I don't know if any of the panelists have a different view to that.
I was going to just say, I think that from a customer perspective, you book a ticket on an airline and you're going and sharing your services, or you're going and looking at the different facilities. I think ultimately, from a customer perspective, the airline is kind of like the entry point, but everything else is a part of the experience, right? So if I know Maurice yesterday used the example of the toilet. If the toilets aren't clean, it's not just also going to impact the airport, right? There's also an optics and a spillover into the airline part. So I think all of those things in conjunction between the operators, the airlines, and the airports are kind of all together. I think our KPIs are very similar, and our promoter score, CSATs, are very similar. I think it's just us kind of coming together and understanding how do we impact that journey, and being able to almost delayer and decouple from the experience of shopping, booking, checking in flight, and of course being at the airport.
Yeah, I think that nobody is going to argue against collaboration. everybody believes that we're all partners, and that if we're going to be successful, we need to work together and share data, share information, share the common good of the passenger, and then we don't. So it's very easy to say that we believe in collaboration, but at a certain point we become very proprietary about what we think we own, and that word ownership keeps coming up over and over again, whether it's in a corporation perspective, with different divisions saying, well, I own this, and what are you doing in my lane? Or with an airline saying, well, we really own the passenger, and the airport said, well, we own this part of the passenger. So I think that human beings are hardwired to be altruistic under certain circumstances, but under stressful circumstances, we revert back to very self-centered behavior. So breaking through, we're all willing. We all actually like ourselves better when we collaborate. But the point is, when the rubber hits the road, we kind of go back into our own silos. So breaking the silos is a really big challenge, and I think the best way to do it is by dramatically illustrating the win-win in a situation. And the best way of dramatically illustrating win-win is seeing it for yourself, seeing it in a graphical way, which is why we believe very much in visualization and a digital twin, which is data fed, and then you put, and we've had great success with our partners, with border control, by showing them about taking the data and changing the cues, and then visualizing what happens, having a clock running, going the old way, and seeing the number of passengers increasing, and then doing it another way with the data, and seeing how much more smoothly the flow is. Then now we're sharing data on a better way. With our airline as well, we've been able to take their data and integrate it with our data and show streamlined efficiency, and that will move mountains. So again, we go back to data infrastructure, and then the visualization layer of showing, making seeing be believing is very, very powerful.
One of the things I want just to add to that and realize one thing, I mean, data is king, right? And we always talk about it inherently. It's worth more than oil and gold. When we realize there's pure value in data. But there's one factor that I think a lot of us lack in regards to we don't think about. If you have the data and you own the data, whether it's Amin, Harry, whatever, if you have it, right? If you have it, Simon, and you don't share it, how good and how valuable is that data? It has no value. Yeah. It means nothing. It's like buying a brand new car and you put it in the garage and never drive it. You have a great car, but it has no value. So you need to find a way, guess what, collaboration, whether you want, change the word from collaboration to just standard traditional engagement. I don't care what you want to call it. Someone needs to get a win. Whether both win, one individual wins, but someone could identify a success factor and says, I have some data that you can use, and with that it can help you improve in efficiency, and you can tout that efficiency. Someone should say, if I have the ability to do something like that, then what? Because in the passenger journey, all you need is one hiccup in the ecosystem and you've lost. Whether it's at CBP, whether it's at the security checkpoint, whether it's in the boarding process, or whether it's at the curb when you're dropping off someone or picking someone up. You need to ensure all that. It even takes it to the roadway. So I talk to our Department of Transportation folks. It's like, how do we ease congestion? How do we look at all of these things to say, once you're gone and let's say maybe, I don't know, demarcation is 3 miles out, then you're free. I don't know. But at the end of the day is, you still have that touch point because your journey's not over yet. Right? Literally, your journey's not over yet. So as much data as I can share, it's free. Come get it. Tell me I don't even want to know what you want to do with it because it's open data. Tell me, here's some things that we've done with it. Here's some things that you can do with it if you add an additional layer. If it can help you move more passengers through your checkpoint, fine. If it can help stop me, see, you know how many times I get a firearm at security checkpoint? We get firearms. I'm like, how can we mitigate some of that to go ahead and ease passenger stress? How can we look at increased level of spend? How can we take additional passenger sentiment? Right, because this is the only unique environment that an airport brings compared to any other vertical where an airport provides all things to all people, but you can't get the transverse of that. All right? I got a dry cleaners, I have a gas station, I have a medical facility, I have everything in an airport. But you cannot do that. Any of those facilities you can't drop an airport in, right? So there's a high level of expectation.
And that's an interesting, I think, segue to the final set of questions I was going to explore with the panel, which, airports are increasingly becoming sort of business or social ecosystems in their own right. I think, some good examples, Changi's The Jewel as an example, they're almost a destination in its own right. And that doesn't work for every airport, size and scale, but certainly opens up a really interesting business opportunity, I think, to think beyond the traditional how do you get people on aircraft. And potentially opens up new revenue opportunities. So, Gerri, from your perspective at Vancouver, how are you maybe rethinking how the airport's role beyond the traditional core aviation, as a business, as a social hub, as a part of the wider community?
Well, extending the entire passenger experience, and Maurice says from garage to gate or from couch to cloud up in the sky, I mean, is something that I think all of us are looking at. And so how do we engage with our passengers when they start dreaming about a destination that might take them through our airports or get them on a flight? And how do you reach them at that particular point? So there are various channels and influencers and ways to do all of that. But when we want them to be able to come to our airport, and there's a wide variety of things to do. Some airports believe that once a passenger arrives at the airport, they're not even going to try to get them to do some shopping because all they care about is getting to the gate. Okay. From our perspective, there are dwell times for passengers. The couch is a dwell time. The ride in is a dwell time. Picking up your bags is a dwell time. While you're waiting in line is a dwell time. And that's the time where you can be engaged, whether it's for entertainment, whether it's getting work done, whether it is learning about offers that are available, learning about experiences. I think that the whole point of looking at the airport as a destination is very, very powerful. And I've always thought about the fact that we have all of these tenants, concessionaires. We have a mall. I mean, we are really proprietors of a mall. And look what's happening at malls. So right now we're offering for rent. We'll get a commission of sales. But what if we could offer layer upon layer of services, much in the same way that Shopify became, and that's my Canadian company, our big unicorn. Shopify became such a big company as a result of figuring out what merchants wanted and then offering more and more and more services. And of course, because I think about data, providing data for our tenants is a huge service, and we know more and more about the passengers. We know passenger X is going to whatever gate they'll be going by, and perhaps that passenger has told us that they are very interested in Chanel perfume, and there's a sale on, and that passenger would be interested. Another passenger could care less about Chanel perfume, so why would you bombard them all with Chanel perfume ads? So I think there's a whole combination of technology and of digital marketing, but it's, again, who's the customer? What are they looking for? Are they looking for entertainment? Are they looking to get to the gate immediately? Are they looking for food? Are they looking for the washroom? Everybody's looking for something else, and we're there to help you find what you're looking for.
I think it's a great example of, there isn't a one-size-fits-all, and with the introduction of more the ability to access data and share that data and understand that customer's requirements and needs more, the opportunity to really personalize that sort of journey further and further. Harry, from your perspective, how do you balance that sort of commercial innovation with sort of the focus around sort of getting people on aircraft as well?
Well, our mission is to get people on airplanes. I mean, that's just a fact. That's the reason we exist. But to Gerri's point, the airport becoming a destination with more and more things to do, and making sure that, while we have the passenger in our facility, that they're pleasantly surprised by the experience. I think that's going to be a mission for me, and that's starting to become increasingly a mission for most airports. That's the reason we created a visitor pass program, in fact, so that you don't have to worry about leaving your family pre-security when you're traveling off to wherever you're going. They can come with you, they can experience the airport with you. They can shop. We can get revenue out of it. So I think those are opportunities that more and more airports are starting to pick up on. And I agree with Gerri. You know, we really look at this from the perspective of what can we do to capture you before you even leave your home. Make sure that your journey is safe and efficient. By the time you get to the airport, you know exactly what's going to happen. You get on your flight, get to your destination safely, and at the end of the day, it's a seamless experience. That's what we're looking for.
And I mean, from an airline perspective, you know, how are you seeing that sort of diversification in sort of opportunities, airports going beyond the traditional view? What's Delta's view?
Yeah, for us, it's really around choice and then giving optionalities to our customers. And so just last month, we had launched this new idea of products and experiences within the Delta app. So imagine, you know, today, before we had this idea of the cabins and then sort of the breakout and the refundable versus non-refundable. We now have this idea of basic, classic, and extra. And within each of those categories, you have a set of experiences that you can expect, right? So being able to be a main cabin extra will allow you to have better boarding when it comes to the experience, or access to lounges. And so we realized that a lot of our customers maybe have certain motives around maybe earning more miles. So being able to purchase a ticket that is an extra will allow have more MQDs or mileage for that year-end status renewal, right? So those are the areas of diversification we're looking at to really bring the choice back to the customer.
Thank you. I think we've got a couple of minutes left. Are there any questions at all from the audience, please? Yes. We've got, I think, one microphone heading your way. Thank you.
If you run up, I can just throw this at you. He's not even listening.
Hi, Eric Burmese of Numbers and Letters. So I've heard this come up with a number of folks that airports and airlines have a hard time sharing data. Is that a legal constraint or technical constraint, or is that something you've seen something build right now?
We just don't like each other. No, realistically speaking, there are no legal constraints based upon PNR data. From an airport perspective, I don't need to know your customer profile, passport information, driver's license number. Just give me demographics, things that I can get from the security checkpoint, male, female, where you're traveling to, certain things that we can actually use for data.
Yep.
An airline can say, what can you give me, airport? More than happy to. There's always been this love-hate relation. I don't know where it came from before my time. It's like the Hatfield and McCoys and when they were just shooting at each other and don't know why. It still happens every once in a while. We're working to fix that. One of these days,
Maurice,
we're
you're a good guy. I love this guy. So, and Gerri, and as well as Harry. So.
I think, well, basically, the airlines are the airport's largest customers. Airports expect top customer service. Yeah. Airlines expect airports expect the airlines to comply with the not regulations, but the policies of the airports. Yeah. The fact is there's lots and lots of room for conflict. Airports hate the fact when the airports seem to wear the blame when something goes wrong with an airline. So there's all kinds of historical reasons not to collaborate, but there's so many more reasons why we can work together as long as we put the passenger first. And so I think we're making progress, but you know, it's again there's always, whenever there's money involved, you're going to get let's just call it a spade. Right, that you're going to rub against each other because who should get the revenue out of what particular situation, and so we need more rev share, we need more data share.
I'm going to maybe take a different angle. I think tangentially what they've said is already there. I think also the power of the data is also within how do we understand the outcomes. I think that especially organizations, depending on who you talk to, have all different outcomes, but being able to tell that story that connects the dots amongst the beneficiaries of that work, I think has to be there. From a, you know, as was told earlier, from a PNR, like Maurice said, from a PNR perspective, we certainly have to be careful because at the end of the day, anything that we do share, we do need to disclose to our customers, right? And so that's another dimension that we have to kind of think about, is without getting too much into that, how does that exposure happen while keeping transparency? So I think there's a lot of, complexities, to say the least, but I think that I think of these as different layers of complications, right? The first layer is some of your basics 101, what happens to your rev model, how does that work? And then, of course, you have the technology infrastructure. Arguably, I would say that's probably the least of the complicated. But then you've got all the other regulatory aspects from the customer as well as the other bodies' perspective as well.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question.
There he is.
Yeah, I'm going to ask
Save
you a
the best
question.
to last.
Hey, appreciate everybody's comments. This is a two-part question, but generally, yesterday and the day before, we're hearing a lot about AI, how AI is going to change the business, how it's going to be more efficient, drive productivity. It's going to, if you use AI to know me before I leave for the airport, you're going to streamline everything to go from couch to gate. That's going to reduce my time. It's going to create more efficiencies for me as a traveler. How do you balance that with all that you're talking about as what we're going to offer in the airport? Because in my mind, at DFW Airport, we're connecting, and if the connecting time is going to be much more efficient, people are going to spend less time in my airport. So there's a challenge with speed and efficiency and revenue. And the same thing with the lounges. Everybody wants a lounge. Everybody's got a credit card. Everybody's going into the lounges. What does that do to my revenue model? So this idea of being a mall that nobody wants to visit anymore because the efficiency is so good that I'm going to get to the airport 30 or 40 minutes prior to my flight, I'm going right to the gate. So how do you handle that?
Who would like to start?
Can I as well?
I mean,
Well, Paul, you're going to get two concepts. So for me, one, there's a perceived notion that you're going to have all of this efficiency, but we're missing some human elements, and we're missing some additional factors that need to go along with that. Currently, right now, airlines are banking a lot more. So the efficiencies used to be an aircraft turn was like an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. Now it's 45. So I'm already losing revenue share already. So if I'm leveraging AI and I'm not doing it properly, am I truly being efficient? And that's a coin flip. So while it sounds good, is it the panacea? There's a probability there's some level of panacea that does exist. From an operational perspective now, yes, I need to be able to take that information. Yes, I'm leveraging AI to make me more efficient, but does that create a bottleneck somewhere else, or am I applying it across the entire part of the ecosystem? I think that's part of your question, is by doing that, how efficient am I from the check-in process? How efficient am I going through security checkpoint? Because if I do that, then I should have ample time to be able to do some level of, shopping or engagement. If I'm going to a lounge, because I think we've had this conversation with one of our carriers, no one wants to go shop. No, I need to change the business model. Or, by the way, scan this QR code and we can shop for you, give you concierge white glove. Let me deliver your experience to the lounge. But lately I'm going to a lounge and it's so packed, I'm better off going to a bar downstairs and enjoying a meal. So yeah, you're shifting the benefits and you're shifting the operations. So for us, as airports, we have to do our due diligence where for every action there's a reaction. All right, what are we impacting by making this happen? So guys, guess what? Why AI sounds great, and I'm seeing so much in AI right now, is it a panacea, or does it really give you the value proposition that you're looking for before you're saying, I want to totally apply it to all my ecosystem? It's almost like, here's a solution, let me go find some more problems. And I think that's what we're also dealing with.
Could I just
good.
answer that too?
Yeah.
Because efficiency in AI is exactly what we need to make things more efficiency, but it's more efficient. It's only part of the overall experience, because some people really care about efficiencies. Other people care about the aperture of experience itself can also be opened at the same time through AI. So for instance, if you've got kids in an aquarium, you make more time because you can be more efficient. The whole thing is being efficient about the unpleasant parts, and being very open about the new experiences, and that's up to us to actually figure out how we change from being the old airports that who would want to go there and just get through as fast as possible to some reason to come there and have a great experience.
And I was going to just add, I think that, yes, I think certainly the efficiency and personalization is going to be a key there, but I'm a bit of an optimist, and my thesis is when we think about AI and concierge and all those things, I think it's going to actually force us to start sharing that data more. being able to implement AI without knowing all of my amenities, where I can shop, is useless. So I think that there will be a time where we will have to get into that situation and the habit of sharing that data, because from a security perspective, how long does it take to get to the lounge? What are the facilities available for me? And then being able to shop with an in-app experience, which is something that we're launching, we talked about early this year for Delta Concierge. It's going to have a lot of that. So I'm a bit optimistic that hopefully this is going to actually force us into doing more collaboration across our ecosystem.
And I'm hearing that, for instance, from my American friends, that they love Lululemon, and if they arrive early at YVR, they can buy their Lululemon brands for the same price in Canadian funds, which are, considerably, unfortunately, cheaper. And so they come earlier in order to do shopping because they know what they want ahead of time.
I think I make it 12:30, which is just on time. So I think we're going to call it there. I'd like to thank panelists for a good conversation today, and thank you all for listening as well. So thank you very much.